Hi, everybody. I can't see you, and I'm going to try to adjust some of this so it's a little better adjusted. I'm a little bit early for once in our lives. I thought I'd have to mess with the color, but for once in the last month and a half, I feel like color is halfway decent. Um, so, yeah, I'm a little bit early, and that's okay. I feel very far away, even so it's kind of strange. Let me see if I can fix that while we wait for people because I'm early. I'm going to talk to myself for a little while. Because, oh, there I am, back closer. Hello, hello, Anaconda. I don't know if closer is better or not, but I felt like I was very far away. So thank goodness I'm not apparently going to talk to myself. I might move that back out after we do a little bit, although you can still see it because I do want to, the second half, I want to go through this cubicle. We've been through all the cubicles except for that one. So we might zoom back out in a little bit. Hello to everybody coming in. It is good to see everyone. How is everybody doing? Since we're going into talking about dealing with stress, right? How's everybody doing this week? I look beautiful in blue. Thank you. Everybody thinks I have blue eyes. It's kind of funny. Of course, you probably can't tell because of this light, but everybody on YouTube thinks I have very blue eyes, and I don't. I have very green eyes, but there's something about the way the filming goes that it looks blue. So my son had beautiful blue eyes. I love my eye color. They're just very, very green. And my daughter has very green eyes. But most people say, oh, you've got such great blue eyes. I'm like, well, thank you, but they're not blue. I don't wear enough blue, though, Hanaconda. This is actually like a gray color. Again, it's just cameras, but I need to wear more blue. I tend to go for black, grays, greens, like earthy tones. I don't wear a lot of blue. Now it's kind of, well, it's gray, but it leans towards blue, I suppose. I think it's the cool light. Trying to balance that off. I think that probably makes it a little more bluer. Some people can't tell the difference between blue and gray eyes. Yeah, my sons would go from grays to blues and had a little bit of a turquoise. He had beautiful blue eyes. Mine are very, very green. It's just, I think, the cool light tones outside. I don't know. It's just the filming. Anyways, we aren't here to talk about my eyes. I just think it's funny because I do, thankfully, I appreciate the compliments. Like, you have really beautiful eyes. I'm like, well, thank you. But usually, you have really beautiful blue eyes. I'm like, well, thank you, but they're green. But anyways, regardless, that's not the conversation. Although, it can be stress relieving to talk about. It can be stress relieving to talk about random things, right? So yeah, I just thought, because obviously, I am sure anybody that's alive here and at this alive here, of course you'd be alive here if you're here. We are getting off to a great start. Let's just rewind the tape. I can feel Miss Molly laughing at me right now. Anybody if you're alive here, I don't know why I think that Miss Molly is particularly. I feel like Miss Molly is generally like just randomly always amused by me in some way. Anyways, let's just rewind here for a minute and start fresh. Hello, everybody. How are you this wonderful Saturday afternoon? I know, Anaconda. Anybody who's here, let's rephrase this. Anybody that's here is probably on the planet Earth having a great deal of stress over all of this virus thing, and everybody has different ways of coping with this type of stress, right? Everybody has different ways in which we cope with things. Some people have humor. Some people tend to more go into full-on panic. Some people throw humor at a situation. And it feels like online that the people who deal with it humorously are irritated by the people who are panicking. The people who are panicking are irritated with the people who use humor to cope, or just find it humorous, right? Some people like Miss Jamie cook. I do cook. I do like to cook when I'm stressed, for sure. But I do feel like in general, people are, not just stressed or having fun, I guess, with dealing, twisted super situation. That's me. My family, we're a little bit of both. Like, we are panic people. We do panic to some degree. But we also tend to have pretty dark humor. So everybody in my family, so all of the girls, let me turn off my chat or my phone. All of the girls in my family, I have 7 kids in my family, and 4 of us are girls. And so my mom and the girls, and then my daughter and my niece, who's, they're adults. We have a chat group that we do, and our chat group has been insane. We are big apocalypse people. To be honest, we are very apocalyptic people. We love apocalypse books. We love apocalypse movies. We love zombie stuff. My brothers, on the other hand, are much more serious-minded military folk. And so they like to be prepared for, real world situations as we are, dealing with, or perhaps moving towards, or something people are having to deal with, these very real world situations. So when these types of things come up, my brothers are ultra prepared and trying to get us to seriously be prepared. And my sisters and I are taking it seriously to be prepared, but we frame it all in the context of the apocalypse. And so we're the kind likely to have like an apocalypse party or things of that nature. So our chat has been, our girl chat, women chat, has been a little insane. I'm not going to lie. We definitely approach things with humor. But that really frustrates some people who say this isn't something that's funny, right? There isn't anything funny about viruses. There's nothing funny about people getting sick. There's nothing funny about people who are really scared and really panicked. And that's true, right? I think, though, that we have to, those of us who can deal with things, and we deal with it in terms of humor, have to understand that not everybody deals with it that way, and like respect their space to deal with things the way they're going to deal with it. The people who are panicking and taking it maybe more seriously have to understand that people who use humor don't necessarily mean that they're not taking things seriously, or they don't recognize that people, that can be very scary for some people, and there are very sick people, right? So you can do both. You can hold space for taking things seriously and having empathy and compassion, and still have dark humor. And so I think the biggest question that has come out of this has been the rush on toilet paper, because it's not even a case of diarrhea or something terrible. And to that end of the part, I'm pointing down here, it has nothing to do with going to the bathroom a lot. So I'm not sure why the toilet paper. I have dark humor. I can't help it. It is who I am. And that is, and let's be fair, I've been through some dark times and have been through some dark situations. My family at my son's funeral were just as bad, because this is how we cope. They coped by feeding me copious amounts of orange juice that they could laugh about giving me so much orange juice, because they didn't want me to wig out. So we cope. If you don't laugh, for us, for our family, like if you don't find some humor in it somewhere, like we're just going to implode, and if we're going to implode either way, we might as well, laugh while we're imploding, right? So, um, but I've seen a lot, I've definitely seen a lot of almost like it almost pits personality types against each other, and which is something that I would, definitely don't like to see. That you can, I think that the people who are coping with humor, does not are there insensitive people in the world? Of course there are. Are there people who are incapable of realizing that there are people who are sick, and there are people who are dying, and there are people who are really struggling and facing issues? Of course there are people who just have no empathy, and that's a problem of its own making, right? And then you have just the normal people. Most of the majority of people are normal people who have empathy for the sick people, have even some degree of empathy for the panicked people, but at the same time are just coping with it differently. And you can hold space for both. So I would say let's all have some grace for each other, that just because my sister and I might be joking about things and having an apocalypse party and watching like all kinds of apocalypse movies, I have definitely done my string of favorite apocalypse movies. That doesn't mean that we don't have empathy. And I think for those of us who do like to joke, that we need to remember that people who are really panicking are feeling that panic. And the panic that somebody is feeling is not something that's funny. So it's just an interesting space, right? I love that. Neighborhood Art says, I've had this quote so long, I can't remember where I found it, but I'm the sort that needs the regular reminder that joy is integral to survival. It's a huge life lesson. It really is. It was a lesson if you watch my channel, my son was sick his whole life, very sick, and passed away a few years ago. And we had to learn that lesson. Like my daughter had to learn that. She grew up her whole life with a very sick brother. My son had to learn that lesson because he was sick his whole entire life. And if you don't find ways to have joy despite chaos or despite difficulties, you're still going to have the difficult. That's kind of the thing. I guess where I landed. Isabel Louise, she does not have joy unless she has somebody to bark at. Oh my goodness. You're one of the things that this is a lesson. Oh my goodness. Isabel, stop. Come on. Somebody's doing something in the hallway, and she's like, my joy is barking at people in the hallway. We all get our joy places, right? My point is that one of the things that I learned, because I was a stress ball. Now, when my son was born, I was very young. I was 20. I don't know if I turned 21. I'd have to do the math, but I was 21 when my son was born, extremely sick. He wasn't going to live, all this kind of chaos. I have other videos about it, but I freaked out to the degree of I had made the mistake of watching Cujo. I don't know if anybody has seen the movie Cujo. It's an older movie. I think it might be a Stephen King movie, but I'm not entirely. I can't promise that that's correct. It's an old movie. And I watched Cujo before my son was born, and relatively quick to when my son was born. And so because he was born sick, because he was on oxygen, he was on monitors, he was on supplemental tube feedings before he got the final permanent feeding tube, I went to super high stress route, and I got so panicked that I was going to be in a situation in which I was stuck. I can laugh about it now, but I was terrified that I was going to be stuck in this car, because in Cujo, a mother is stuck in a car with her son, and there's this rabid dog, or I don't remember if he's rabid or if he's just like a crazy dog. I don't know if he had rabies. I don't know, but it's like crazy big dog. And And if she was like trapped in this car and they didn't have, it was hot and they didn't have any water, and her son was in the car. And so I got so paranoid. I had this newborn baby who was, not healthy, who had needed oxygen. And I was so afraid that I was going to get trapped in the car and he was not going to have water or oxygen. So I literally had like bags at the door, in the car, with water, with bouillon, with I can't even remember, probably extra oxygen canisters. And I had it in front of the car, or in front of the door. And then I think I had some in the car, and I had that for quite some time. That wasn't a rational, like, it was a reaction to all the other stress that was going on. Obviously, I had reason to be stressed out, but I didn't have reason to believe that I was going to get trapped in a car by Cujo or some other Cujo type dog. But I felt it, right? So even though logically I knew that I was not going to get trapped in a car by Cujo with my son, I was reacting to all the other stressors, and the panic about it felt just as real as if it was true. Like, it didn't really matter that I wasn't going to get trapped in the car by Cujo. It was really scary. It was really panic inducing. And so over time, obviously he lived for 23 years. Over time, I came to realize that bad things were going to happen, right? Hospital stays were going to happen. Surgeries were going to happen. Sicknesses with him were going to happen. Eventually, unfortunately, he was going to pass away. Me being utterly miserable the whole time until that point wasn't going to make that point any easier, right? It wasn't going to make it easier. It did not. I can promise you that. It did not make it any easier to cope with. And then I would have lost out on all of that living, the time that we had to live. So my kids, because of my son's sickness, and myself as a turning into an adult human being, had to realize that if you don't seize the day, right? Seize the day to live while you can live, be serious, do the things that have to be done, but find joy and find enjoyment, find laughter, find absurdity, find irony in living. It's not going to make it any easier to deal with this. It's not going to make it harder to deal with the deal. It's not going to being miserable now isn't going to make being miserable later better or worse. It just is. You're going to have to deal with it no matter what. So just find the way to still find joy, even in the difficulties. And so I feel like perhaps we've taken that to an extreme in terms of our apocalypse loving. I think my family will be slightly disappointed if we end up dying without the apocalypse. Again, just kidding. We don't want the world to be plunged into the apocalypse, but there will be slight disappointment, I believe, on our deathbeds if we don't if we don't experience the apocalypse. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, other than the fact that have grace for each other. I guess that's my point, is have grace for the people with dark humor. And people with dark humor have grace for people who are really panicked, because in the moment of feeling panicked, it's a terrible feeling, right? Even if we look at it and we say, how on earth do you think you're going to need that much toilet paper? At the same time, that person's experiencing panic, and that's not a fun place to be in either. So it's an interesting conundrum. I had, really, obviously paying attention to things, keeping my eye on things, but I think it was Thursday when I got up, and I literally had like 4 rolls of toilet paper left. I thought, okay, I need to get toilet paper. No, there was no toilet paper in my area. On Thursday, there was no toilet paper. There's no toilet paper at Costco's, which, if you're in the out of the US, is like a big like bulk food store. Costco's, Kroger's, like a grocery store, Walmart by me, like nobody had any toilet paper. I'm like, I don't even care about the apocalypse at this moment. I just need toilet paper just as a regular thing. I'm a person who needs a lot of toilet paper. So it was kind of like, oh dear, like this is a really this is going to impede my use of toilet paper, because a lot of people are panicking apparently about toilet paper. But which again, I think many of us with dark humor are just finding ironic because it's a flu, it's a cough kind of thing. It has nothing to do with your bowel system. So I would just really like somebody to tell me why why it is like the toilet paper was such. And then I've seen people, of course, everybody's been showing pictures of their aisles, store aisles, and different regions do have different things that are missing. Like I think Tom Benjamin put up pictures he's in on the eastern seaboard, and it was pasta, like all the pasta was gone. um my when I went, most of the things that were gone were like tuna fish and beans. Like that kind of makes a little bit more sense, but pasta does too. But like all the pasta was gone, right? So I think different areas having different things. It's like we're starting to see like, what do you think you really need if you're in that situation? And it's kind of interesting psychologically, like you just with my family being large enough, seeing what were people stocking up on, even in my own family. For me, it seems to be soup and bread. So I went to get, enough stuff, because they said have enough stuff for 2 to 3 weeks. So you don't have to go out if you get sick. And almost all of mine is revolving making large pots of soup and making homemade bread because a world without bread for me is the apocalypse. So, and then whereas other sister, my daughter say she like had tons of frozen fish because she eats a lot of fish. Like we have different things, and even just individually seeing what people tends to, what are you stocking up on? What is your, this panic moment? Like, what are you, everybody seems to be toilet paper, but other than toilet paper, for me, apparently it's soup and bread. Like, let's make a big pot of soup and enjoy the moment. And so it needs some hot, crusty bread fresh out of the oven. I know. See, stuff like that. And see, this is the problem. And Molly is saying, making a very good point, is that probably, the part of the difficulty is it doesn't really matter if people are panicking for and stocking up too much, or if they really have a reason to need to stock up, or all of that stuff. In the end, it doesn't matter because it actually does affect people, right? So for example, my niece, my great nephew has migraines. He's a little boy and he's got migraines, and she went out to get what he needs for over-the-counter medicine that he needs for his migraines and couldn't find any. And there really wasn't any reason for that necessarily to be the case, except for everybody else's panic. Obviously, it's a snowball effect, right? So not being able to find that. And I will say that had my son been alive today, I would probably be more panicked, right? Just because he has massive respiratory problem. So he would have been a very high risk. We would have gone into lockdown, and we did that with all types of flu things. But yeah, I do think that there's this battle, there's this, as in all things in life, right? There's this place in which we have to find a balance between being smart. And this is what I told my daughter, because my daughter, when we realized we couldn't get any toilet paper, my daughter, she's like, I don't know, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be feeling or doing. Like, am I supposed to be stocking something up? I don't want to feed into the frenzy, but at the same time, would like to have toilet paper, right? So it was like, we have to, our family landed in, everybody should be smart. Everybody needs to be smart, have a couple weeks of food just stocked up, so that if you don't, that way you don't have to go to the store and be exposed. But I don't think you necessarily need to be preparing for years of the apocalypse. Or even the bottled water was a little concerning to me, because I was like, we do have water. Like, we're not talking about an electrical outage or something like that, right? We're talking about a flu that's going to keep you in the house for a few weeks. So it's just interesting to see how people's minds go. No, ours either, Hanaconda. You think it's starting to see it? I got done Thursday, so I haven't. I'm like staying away from the stores because that was the other thing is I've seen a lot of people who are like, okay, I'm going to get all of this stuff so that I don't have to go to the store and be exposed. But then they keep going back to the store over and over again. Like, and I'm like, well, you're now what? Like now you're just going back and going where you can get exposed. Just like yeah, I think it's a lot of it does have to do with the mask thing. A lot of it is, trying to be, smart and be, prepared. So it's like, how do you find that balance and having a little bit of a sense of humor, but not being insensitive? Like everything's about balance, right? It's all about balance. Hand sanitizer, like you can make that if you have essential oils, like you can get a witch hazel. I checked, nobody's making a run on witch hazel. And so I just have witch hazel and I put a couple drops of lemon, orange, and tea tree oil for makes a hand sanitizer as well. But yeah, no, people aren't Tylenol, like all those kinds of things. And again, then it gets to be a problem with, the people that need it now, they literally need it because they have like a migraine or something, then they can't get it. And then this kind of panic then scares you because then it's like this kind of snowball effect that starts to happen. So it's just, yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's definitely in that, okay, here we go. Right. Here we go. Do you guys remember? I don't know. Well, if you're old enough, you might remember Y2. Well, I think everybody on here will be old enough to remember Y2K. That was the last one that I remembered. We'll be using Uber Eats a lot. Yeah, CBD oil is good for anxiety. But other things, like there's things that you can do. Like what are, so I guess that's kind of why we're having this conversation about stress and anxiety. Some people, again, go to humor. My family has gone straight down the dark humor hole. We have definitely watched a lot of apocalypse movie, our favorite virus outbreak movies. That's the kind of humor of my family. That's the kind of dark hole that we go down. Whereas Gaming Terry has been watching older musicals. I've been watching World War Z, Outbreak, I Am Legend, right? I tend to save the musicals for sadness. So when I'm feeling particularly grief-oriented or grief-stricken, I tend to go to the old musicals and Disney for that. But if it's this type of stuff, I go straight to the apocalypse movies. My whole family does. Yeah, Miss Veronica, I believe it. But my point is, I'm sorry, I keep getting sidetracked. Yeah, no, for sure, Hannah Conda. That's a good one to watch too. Yes, and there was one. So then they were bringing back Resident Evil. Oh, I love that whole series. I've watched it so many times. There was one where a bunch of people got trapped in they were doing it. The government, of course, who's always doing this, had put a contagion of some kind into a apartment building and locked them. I think it was, I don't remember what it's called, but locked them into this hotel or apartment building and wouldn't let them out. And they were like, some kind of a virus was put in there. And this is old. This is when my kids were younger, and we had all gotten together to watch it. This is when my sisters, because they were a lot younger than me. My youngest sister's 19 years younger than I am. And so her and her boyfriend were there, and we were all like laying all over the floor, and I was laying on an air mattress. And so every time, I'm a big jumper, right? So when things happen, I'll jolt and jump, things that are scary. I love to watch scary movies, but I jump really hard, and my legs kept like flying up every single time that something was happening in that movie. And my brother-in-law, they weren't married at the time, but it's been so many years, and he still says that's like his favorite memory is me like jolting to this, whatever this movie is called. I don't know what it's called. Yes, love that book as well, Matthew, for sure. But not everybody gets relief in dark humor, right? So other people have to come up with other things to release that pressure. I had it when my son was in his last couple years. I went and saw a therapist finally. I'd had a super bad experience with a therapist when my son was young. I mean, it was a very bad experience with a therapist, and it definitely made me never want to go back to a therapist after that. So this was 20 years later. They had a grief counselor that was part of the hematology ward. And so they're like, you can go talk to him. He's really nice. He looked like a guy out of the 70s. And I was like, okay. Anyways, but he explained it how we have our normal level of living, right? This is here's where we are. And so if we're think of it he related it to a pressure cooker. Now, I love pressure cookers, electric ones, but if you remember they still have them, but the ones that they do on the stove top, where they would I remember my mom had one, and you would just think it was going to explode. It would just literally start bouncing around. And you have this, and it had this little vent, and it would just start releasing air pressure as it would trigger, too much pressure, and it would out air pressure. And he was like, if you're right here all the time, because, in that case, we were at the end of life for a couple of years. And so that's a great deal of stress after, 20 some years of chronic illness and things like that. He's like, here you are, right? Already at a high level. Here's the top of the pressure cooker boiler, right? You only have somebody else might have this much space. Somebody might have this much. Somebody might, because of their own circumstances and whatever's going on, they might just have this much space between the top, here to the top, where things are just going to get really bad for them emotionally and stressed out wise. So you have to find ways to let that pressure out, those little ways that you can release stress, relieve pressure, so that you don't, turn into that pressure cooker environment. So it doesn't have to be big things all the time. It can be little things. What are the little things that relieve that pressure gauge? Let some of this pressure out a little bit. Some people it's humor. Some people it's watching apocalypse movies. Some people it might be knitting. We were joking that my niece, who knits all the time, she needs to, have 3 or 4 months worth of knitting projects of yarn, or else my nephew-in-law is not going to survive any kind of a quarantine. So some people it's knitting, or something they can busy work they can do with their hands. Some people it's physical activity, okay, you need to get out and run, not where there's 100 people or more, at least in my state anymore, but get outside and run, or get on the treadmill and do something physically active, because that's going to relieve stress. Some people it's edging decks. Apparently that's I've got a big Sharpie marker here, and I want to edge this Flowers of the Language of Flowers little mini deck that last week somebody recommended. I can't remember who. And yes, I think that's what it's called, Andrew. I think it's called Quarantine. I think there's a Quarantine 2, which I never saw. But yes, that was my nephew, or my brother-in-law's favorite memory of me, is watching Quarantine and jolting. Yes, I think that's what it was called. So yeah. So what are other people's what are your stress relievers? Me, it tends to be humor, definitely movies. Definitely if I'm really stressed out, I have a hard time reading books, looking at books, because my mind's going blah, 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 blah. I have a Libra crazy brain. So if I'm really stressed out, physically reading a book doesn't work as much, because my brain is literally going, just, you wouldn't want to see the inside of my brain. So I do better with audiobooks and movies and things like that. I do better with that kind of thing. Painting, obviously for me, painting is a huge stress relief. So that kind of thing can come into play. I'm sure we're going to be talking about decks, I'm sure, really soon. Let me getting into kind of reconnecting to nature is definitely, that's definitely, not everybody has the opportunity to do that, but yes, I can definitely see that. Cooking for me too, flamboyant, clairvoyant. I love to cook. Obviously, as I was saying earlier, if you're just coming on, we've been kind of laughing in my family about what each of our family members are thinking, like, okay, we have to, like, that's what I'm going to go out and buy if I think I'm going to be stuck inside for 2 or 3 weeks. Mine being soup and bread. So cooking, definitely big pots of soup and homemade bread is obviously high up there on my list. I don't, is it Terrace? I don't know what this, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Terrace, yeah, Teresa, maybe Teresa the cook. I'm just going to call you the cook. The cook. I'm so sorry. Watching this is helping me so much. I made a cake to deal with stress. Yeah. Well, see, you're a pastry chef, but the cake was a mess. Oh no. The panic came into the kitchen. Oh no. Yeah. Well, I would assume pastry chef, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of, timing and precise measuring. And if you're stressed, maybe you can't quite do that. Alice says it blows her mind. We're having this conversation. I figure it's an elephant in the room. Yeah, everybody's talking about it and thinking about it, so we might as well talk about it because, again, my reason for bringing it up is that I just starting to see that I hate so and so. If one, I hate all the people out there who are putting up funny like joke memes because there's some funny ones out there. There's some funny, somebody's version of the panic room, and it was literally like a toilet with just toilet paper rolls all over the place. Probably going to flip Simon out to see whether the toilet paper roll was toilet paper was up or under. But a lot of people like, if I see one, we're like, I'm going to delete all these people. They're horrible human beings because they're joking. And then you've got the people like me with a bit more dark humor that are like, okay, if I see one more person like panicking and buying 20 packs of toilet paper, I'm going to flip out. And it's like, okay, if your social media feed is causing you that much stress, like if it really is causing you that much stress where you want to strangle people, it's probably, we have to be responsible for our own social media feed. And so maybe it's time for a social media break. Like if it's really bothering you that much, maybe I'm saying on both sides, if you're like irritated with the panic people, or you're irritated with people who are making jokes about it, or whatever that stress is in being induced higher because of it, we can turn off our social media, right? We can delete it off our phones. We can, there's got to be ways to put it on pause mode of some sort. Or if there's somebody who's just really irritating you, mute them on the things. There are things to disconnect ourselves. And I actually think it's our responsibility, right? I really don't think it's anybody else's responsibility to moderate themselves for my benefit. Now, we're not talking about hate speech and things like that. I'm talking about just irritation, right? That we have to be responsible. I'm responsible for what's in my social media feeds. I'm responsible if I even go to social media feeds, right? And so that's kind of my responsibility to monitor. It's not other people's responsibility to monitor the way that they're going to, what they're going to put up on their feeds. So I feel like if you're really getting frustrated and upset by, so if social media is causing you more anxiety, then that's an indication that it's probably time just to take a break and step back from all of that, because you don't need anything that's going to increase your stress and anxiety for sure. And when all dancing is I love dance breaks for sure. Yeah, I think a little bit probably would go for a lot of people, although I'm having fun with some of the crazy memes that are popping up. Yes, exactly. Essence 818. That was my point earlier, that even the people who are, again, are there insensitive people? There are, let's not pretend that the human race is this beacon of light, right? There are people who are completely insensitive to what's going on in other countries, to even what's going on in my country, where people and things are cropping up even higher, and there are a lot more lockdowns. And even in my state, like, we're under a state of emergency. There's no gatherings over 100. Schools are shut down. That affects my family who are trying to work, and now all of a sudden they've got young children who aren't going to school. Like, there's a lot of ramifications to it that are not funny, right? But and there are people that are insensitive to that. So there are insensitive people in the world, but I think that most of the people that are cracking jokes, that's just their way of dealing. And I think that most of the people who are panicked are genuinely panicked, and that's not a good space to be in. And so we should have some empathy. It's like, everybody breathe and kind of come back to center. I feel like we should yeah. And I was just saying that, and then I saw Simon was like talking something about Lima, like, it all balance out. That's totally me. It's like, everybody come back to middle here. Maybe we need to have some guided meditations so that we can all, with a little bit of humor into them. Maybe I will have a guided meditation of walking through surviving the apocalypse in some way. An apocalyptic guided meditation. There's probably a room for this in the world. I feel like I could manifest a guided apocalypse meditation. But I'm definitely of the, all right, let's all take a breath and come back to center. Let's all have a little bit of grace for each other. It's going to be okay. And if you can't have grace, and if it's really upsetting you, then you need to put yourself in a timeout. It's, because it's your responsibility to take care of self. And if that means not reading things like social media, then that's your responsibility to manage. As long I'm with Simon. All of that would go out the window if the internet went down for me. I always say, like, I'd rather have a food shortage than have no internet. So I am definitely with Simon. There will be no balancedness for me minus the internet. No, then I would just think of how much we would get done. That's one thing. That would be one good thing. Like, how much could I get done? I could paint. I would get so many things done painting. I would get book finished writing. There's so much I could get done probably if I didn't have the internet for a little while, just for a little while. If there's an elephant in the room, Claire is not on cleanup duty. Okay, I know I've missed stuff. I'm, when I talk. Yeah, taking classes is great. My Lenormand class starts next week. You want to learn a new system? Come join us, learn a new system. Yeah, there's probably lots of stuff that we can do with the internet. When that goes down, we're definitely in trouble. Okay. One of me is like, most people don't even know they have. Okay, I think that I'm just scrolling up here. If I've missed something that you want to make sure that I've missed it, just redo it again with my name on it or in capital letters or something. But my big stress lever for me right now is flipping through my tarot decks, playing with my cats, listening to music, jokes on Instagram, fave. See, everybody's so different, right? That sounds perfect to me. Minus the cats would be swapped to Isabel, but that sounds pretty much like me. Wabi Sabi, I'm so excited. I know, it's like, let's all learn Lenormand. Hope you've been exploring your in the casting class. The casting class won't the casting class won't have to do, I won't be using cards in the casting class too much. That's going to be more just to how do you organically, when you cast things down, whatever you might be casting, we're going to go over different casting systems. We'll talk about journey tokens and symbols and things like that. But most of it's going to be about like how organically reading things that you've just kind of thrown around. You've organically thrown. Gardening is amazing. I have no place to garden by me, but Elron wants to know if anyone's doing readings on how this will end. I don't tend to do those kinds of readings, like those kind of general, like where, except for my dreams, where I use tarot cards, the Alice Tarot specifically, a very expensive out of print deck to fight zombies. But that's the only way I've used tarot cards in terms of apocalyptic, or like I don't tend to read like who's going to win the presidential campaign and things like that. For me, I don't feel like, and this is the way that I read. Everybody reads differently, so it works. If you're accessing your guides, they might know something that I don't know, right? But in terms of the way that I personally read, there's not a set future. And so everybody's choices and decisions impact it. So when you start to look at that wide topic, such as politics or pandemics or things like that, where you have so many different people making these minute changes and choices and decisions, I think it's just really hard to get a forecast on that. That's going to be anything more than an interesting exercise. But then again, somebody else might have a better shot at it. Remember when everyone was predicting? I know, Al. I believe I was one of those. I've actually 2020 has been pretty good for me up till this point. But yes, I was definitely like, okay, I'm ready to be done with 2019. Let's move into 2000. There's always something, right? We can't have like a perfection year either. It's driving me crazy. I know I'm saying a lot. I have always used humor's way. Becca's always done that. Okay. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people do. But then there's that big divide between those that do, but then those that humor really irritates people. And I do think, and let's be fair also, I do think that some people use humor to lash out at other people. So I do think that humor can be used in a way that is not empathetic and is not sympathetic, and is not kind at all. Like humor is great, but it can be used in really harsh ways and as well. So it's like there are mean people in the world, but I think a lot of us are just finding it funny. Oh, 2020 settled by Corona. The Corona. I wonder if it has helped the Corona beer industry, or I feel like they've made out. That's what I feel. I feel like they've probably made out pretty good, versus it being actually a problem for them. Scrolling. Oh no. Al said some people were boycotting. See, those kinds of things I think is kind of funny, because it's like why would you boycott a beer because of a name that's been that name forever and has nothing? Do you really think that they're ruined? I don't know. I mean, I was at a restaurant and there were a lot of people who were ordering it for the dark humor. So that's that kind of stuff to me is like, for me, the lack of common sense. That's where I start to get a little bit. It's like, okay, let's everybody have a dose of common sense. Can we sprinkle some common sense on the dark humor people as well as the panic people? Like, let's all come to the middle with a good old dollop of common sense here and kind of come together on this way in a little bit better way, right? There's enough to divide people in the world. Let's try to have a little bit of common sense there. Being at work causes me anxiety. At home makes me calm. My thinking is more calm at home, but then we still have to go to work, right? That's what's difficult. Molly said people actually thought the beer and the virus. Oh, she's asking that. Yeah, I guess I never thought that was something people actually connected. The coronavirus, that is a strand of virus. I'm not an expert. Please do not come to me for expert advice on viruses or anything else. If you want some expert advice on how to survive an apocalypse started by a zombie inducing virus, I may be the person to talk to, but an actual virologist, I am not. But that's actually a strain that's been around for a long time. That didn't just crop up from the beer, obviously. Yeah, so it's like, I think that, yeah, people just panic and then the common sense goes out the window. Snoop says they aren't doing worse. They're not doing any worse. My guess is that they, the people that maybe wouldn't, if you have the people who, because on one hand, you have the people who maybe wouldn't buy it because of that. But then on the other hand, you have the dark humor people who would buy cases of it for their stockpile because what would be better than stockpiling Corona in the situation, right? So then I feel like they're going to even out. That would be my guess, is that they'll be all right. They'll survive. And Gentle Fire says, just instead of buying toilet paper, buy a bidet, right? Get a bidet, get a squeeze bottle. They work fine. If you've been pregnant and had a baby, how after you've had a baby, you have one of those lovely squeeze bottle thingies. There's bidet in a bottle, right? It's pretty cheap bidet. Yeah, I'm not either one of those things, Jamie. Matthew says, for a year head spread that I did in December, I pulled stay-at-home card for the next 3. There you go, Matthew. Listen to the cards. Just stay home. Thank you, Outbox. Coronavirus is a class thank you of viruses, of which there are many. But the term corona, my point being, the term corona has been associated with viruses for a while, and it has nothing to do with the beer. That's where we were trying to get to. Oh dear. I think that's what happened to the toilet people. Some people heard virus and didn't Google what kind. That could be. It is funny with the toilet paper in the water, because I'm like, I could get those things, especially water. I could get with like Y2K when the electricity was all supposed to shut down, but I'm like, I'm not entirely sure why we need to stockpile on water when we can turn on the tap. I mean, a lot of us don't maybe like tap water, but we can. For the most of the world, we do have the luxury of taps. But Jamie studies alpaca. Oh, so she really is a vomitologist. I'm neither a virologist nor a vomitologist. Apocalypologist. It's not a word, but maybe I'm that. That's about it. Sorry. Oh, rudeness. I haven't seen Nikki. No. I mean, her computer was doing good. And then, so she was here last week and her computer was she thought she'd fixed it, but then it acted up again. And I think she was going to have to send it, take it in to be fixed. So my guess is that she doesn't have that back. Again, I don't believe the electricity is well, that's my point, I guess, Al, is I don't think that we have any concerns over the electricity going down in the next 3 weeks, at least in the US. Now, should this obviously turn into something down the road much worse, probably those few packs of water bottles aren't going to be a long-term fix. But I think it just comes down to everybody taking a breath, everybody having compassion for people who are sick and who are in situations that are very uncomfortable right now, but also if you're really flipping out, stop with the social media. That's just not going to help. I don't think there's anything on social media that is actually going to be helpful if you are frustrated, or if you're getting frustrated with social media, I don't believe there'll be any true news that you will miss by not being on your social media. Like, find a reliable news source, get your news there, and turn off the social media if it's really getting to you. I'm so glad I live in the city now. My childhood home, yeah, mine, I grew up with delicious well water. My mom still has it, but it does need electricity. Um, Definitely needs electricity for it. I'd much rather have a national. We do have a National Day of Terror. I never remember what it is until it just comes. Um, I think a lot are panicky because they don't have a group like this one and are feeling yeah, and that is, I think, going to become more of a problem. In all seriousness, Hanaconda, I do think that that's going to be a problem. My daughter's definitely, now I'm a hermit, because she even said, she's like, I'm not worried about getting the coronavirus. Like, she's not really worried about, she's healthy. She's not in any of those kind of criterias in which it might be more difficult. So she's not like she's panicking about getting sick, but she's panicking about the quarantining for 2 to 3 weeks, because she's like, I'm not like you, Mom. Like, you could just go in your apartment and not come out for 2 weeks and be fine. She would have a hard time being in her apartment by herself for 2 weeks. So I do think that that's going to cause panic for some people. The thought of having to try to be by yourself, or some people being trapped in with their family members, right? That can be just as stressful. Like, some people, I'm sorry, there are some people who do great in their relationship and all that, but have to be in each other's space 24 hours a day for 3 weeks. Could be a little rough. So I think there's like stress on many different reasons. And of course, we're not even talking about the real stresses here. This is more just about how do we kind of manage this stress, and what are the go-to which is what I told her. I know, Hannah, I'm like, look, as long as we have the internet, like, we do have FaceTime and Facebook and all those other kinds of things. And if it really gets bad, I'll just come be quarantined with you. Yeah, I'm that way, Nicole. Like, I feel that I'm certainly more of this is sort of my natural habitat to be hermited. So I'll be fine with that kind of thing. I would have more struggle being cooped up with people. So if I had to be cooped up with multiple people for 24 hours a day, day after day, I would have a harder time with that than I would being by myself. So I definitely think that as people are, because it is the case that, people are lots. I know that's exactly what's going to happen, Elron. This is going to be another baby boom. Keep on, keeping those connections up as people really do go into that, where they're, obviously being told even now, you shouldn't be running around to the store, going to movie theaters and things of that nature. So no matter what your area looks like right now, my guess is that social contact is going to drop for a little while, no matter what. And so making sure to find those ways to still make those connections and have annoying humor. We're humorously compassionate here at The Truth in the Story. We hold space for the people who feel panicked and how awful that feels, but we also hold space for the dark humored people, and we coexist with a little bit of grace tossed in, right? So I know that's what I think, Becca. Like, there are few people that I would want to be on lockdown with. There are few people. There are people that I can do it with, but they are a very small list. It's like bad when my nails are wretched. I have to take care of those. And of course, other people are having panic on other things than just this because it affects people's jobs. Again, it's already affecting school, which then affects people's jobs. If you have young children, if you have teenagers and they can be by themselves, then, you're golden. But there's a lot of people with young kids that don't have, full-time daycare things set into place. And so, this certainly, and even in my area, that's already already an issue, and people concerned about money and their finances, and people who, that kind of stuff is stressful. But this is a safe space to not lick candles or salt lamps. Uh, we are, Hannah Conda says, we are, however, instituting a moratorium on lamp licking, aka salt lamp licking, out of abundance of caution. Not to mention that's just going to make you thirsty, and then you're going to drink more water, and, it's just going to go down a bad place, for sure. Yeah, I have too. I've done that a couple of times. I thought, you know what, this is a little bit rough on the smaller restaurants for sure. Um, no, electricity would definitely be difficult. I don't know that anybody is having a space in which the electricity is the problem. Um, Yeah, daycare's hard. I mean, for sure, Al. That's our area too. All schools are closed. I'm assuming daycares are closed. I don't know how that works, but if it's a larger daycare here, anyways, in my state, I don't think those would be able to remain open. So, and I do agree, Molly. I think that it's one of the silver linings is that a lot of people are able to at least do some form of their work from home. Like obviously it's a win-win for me because I can work from home. But on the other hand, my job has to do with stores in New York. Part of my job has to do with stores in New York. And if those shut down, my job shuts down. And obviously, things like that, like when people panic, they're spending less money, which affects a lot of people, artists and people who are musicians like Elron, and things that are shutting down because they, sporting things, and that type of stuff affects people's livelihood that maybe don't have office jobs that they can take home. So it can cause an issue with finances relatively quickly, and we're all kind of in that boat unless you do have a real solid job that you can do from home that's not going to be affected. So, I mean, we all have reasons to be stressed. And the purpose of this chit chat is not to belay that, because most of us are in that problem, or in that space where we are concerned about finances and things like that, and if it were to go on too long. And but we can come here and have a little laugh about it, and a little bit of a take a breath moment together, and kind of breathe through it, right? Toadstool says our little group is most likely to panic if Amazon delivery grinds to a halt. So true. So true. Yeah, I think that probably more people could than not. But again, sometimes that is reliant, like say myself, I do work from home from my muggle job, but that's gonna be gone if the stores in New York shut down. And New York in the US has quite a lot higher likelihood of those kind of things happening. So in the US, that's one of those cent points that are, have a lot of cases and would probably get a lot more cases quicker. So, that can affect even the people who have work at home. So it's just, yeah, it's definitely, I don't think that, and things like paid sick leave is great, but if you're an independent contractor person, it's, that doesn't work as much. Like it's a whole thing, isn't it? But our point is, I roll it back. We're not going to go into the panic mode, right? We're going to stay on apocalyptic themes here on the Truth and Story Now. But none of it, all of the things. My point is that we all have legitimate reasons to have some stress, extra stress right now, extra panic right now. But completely wigging out or stressing out or going, off the deep end isn't going to make it any better, right? It's not going to help the situation. In fact, it will make it worse because then we can't make good, clear-minded decisions and things like that. So, having humor for a moment and relieving some of that stress, and painting, if painting works for you, get a deck and edge it. That's an amazing stress reliever. Like finding those things, coming together and talking tarot, like those types of things are going to help you through that, because it's not going to make it any better to totally wig out. What's the next thing in front of us? That's been my motto. I've said this a bunch. Frozen 2, and I have another book that I can't remember the name of it. I've got to look it up so I can tell the story accurately. But the end of 2019, I was just like, oh, like this has been really rough, and I'm just not feeling this. Like, I don't know, you just don't know which way to go, right? All you can do, just the storyline of Frozen 2, where her mom's like, what's the next right thing? Like, what's the next thing in front of you that you have to make a decision on? And you make the next right decision. You make the next decision. That's all you can do, because snowballing ahead isn't going to stop ahead from coming. It just might shut us down from, just kind of stepping through this one step at a time. So, yes, Veronica Jude. High five to Miss Veronica. Miss Veronica and I were like split at birth, I believe. I'm looking forward to rewatching that. Oh no, there's a lot. I noticed, Terry, on Netflix, like the number one watched movie for the last couple of days has been Outbreak. So I watched it last night, of course. But yeah, I know I've watched World War Z yesterday. I watched Outbreak last night. And then I can't remember what I'm watching right now, which was not actually that good, that my daughter recommended. But yeah, I'm definitely, all those movies are high up there at the moment. Gentleflower says she's very surprised by her neighborhood. People are offering food to each other, and childcare has restored her faith. There's a lot of good people out there, isn't there? There really are. I think it helps if you are in, is it Outbreak? Yes, that's the one. It's not a talking monkey, but it is a monkey that is carrying the virus, or the mutated virus, but it's not a talking monkey. That is Planet of the Apes, Mr. Simon, which is also an awesome one. Okay, remember the scene? I'm talking about the old ones, although I like the new ones too. But that moment where he's like running on the beach, and he sees the Statue of Liberty like in the sand, and just like it's his hand coming up, and he realizes he's really on Earth. That's one of those epic moments in Planet of the Apes. Also, the one, what was that one? Soylent Green, where Charlton Heston, he's like running, and they're eating humans. It's like, humans, they're eating humans. Doing, of course, and this is my slow motion. I don't know why people haven't hired me to do slow-mo work, but it's like running, and just like epic moment of realization that they're eating humans. Shaun of the Dead is an awesome movie, period. It's so smart. So is Paul. Paul and Shaun of the Dead are my favorites from them. But we will pull a card, I promise. I promise we'll get back to, we're at the time. We need our weekly. I don't have my zombie one out because it's not out right now. We should have that out to pull our cards from. Essence is not going to the Apocalypse. I'm all the way in on the Apocalypse movies, but I watch Apocalypse movies all the time. Like, there's never a bad time for an Apocalypse movie or book. Hello, Miss Biffy is out of sync. Okay, I'm not gonna try to catch up because I know. Well, the thing I love about Shaun of the Dead, Hanaconda, is that opening scene where he has no clue that there's even been an apocalypse, a zombie apocalypse, because everybody does pretty much sleepwalk through life. So that sleepwalking through life doesn't look any different than the dead people that are meandering the streets now, which is so awesome. Okay. I'm gonna pause here and do our weekly reading. We need a weekly, and I'm gonna try not to dump any pop while I do it. Whale Song is not watching any of End of the World. Oh no, yeah. If that's your normal, if wearing that kind of stuff is your normal, then definitely don't watch that, Miss Whale Song, because my day is not spent with. Is this not one of the most beautiful Five of Swords? Oh, see, we're gonna have the same problem here. Let's try this. If I turn this off for a moment, then we can see the card better. I think this is a beautiful Five of Swords. That's not our card. Don't stress. That's not our card. But I just saw it at the bottom of the deck. We are going to, yes, I have The Last of Us. I need to finish Anaconda. We too are, I feel like we definitely are like the sisterhood of crazy people. If the zombies come, I'm putting some sugar on my arm and closing my eyes, said Sherry. We are using the Art of Life, which is what we use for our week cards. Susie, my grandmother was a Depression era teen young adult, and she lived very frugally. Yeah, no, mine was too. Plus, she had 9 kids. Like, my mom came from one of 9. And then my mom had 7, so we've all grew up with frugal living, that's for sure. Yes, 4 Thieves oil is great. I already have a batch made up. I also have a batch of elderberry. You know, I got influenza B. Was it last year or the year before? It wasn't this last fall, so it must have been the year before. I got influenza B, and it was terrible. I am not kidding you. It was terrible. We're getting there, Claire. We're getting there. Breathe, Miss Claire. Center, and breathe. We are going to have a card. I promise. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I had influenza B. I was going somewhere with the influenza B. It was terrible. Oh, anyways, I know what I was saying. And I ended up taking, I had quite a few people say, I use elderberry tincture anyways, but elderberry tincture is really good for like flu-like things and stuff like that. So, and for ending it quickly. So I definitely have a big batch of elderberry tincture made up in vodka. Because if you make it, I've made it both ways. I've made it with, just where it's the syrup, which tastes better. The vodka version is pretty nasty, but the shelf life then is really long. So I have elderberry gummies and elderberry tincture. Hello, Mr. Patrick. I am glad you are on your way to pick him up and get him. Claire, you might be a little bit behind. I've noticed sometimes people's feeds are behind, like maybe they paused it. So it's very possible that some people have, like, they're out of sync with it and don't realize we've talked about it. I just ordered some elderberry. See, I haven't even looked at the health food store because I'm pretty stocked up on essential oils and elderberry because I just have a fresh big bottle of elderberry tincture. So and I still have some dried elderberry too that I can make more of. I know, Claire. Sorry. It'll be okay. I love you, Claire. Let's see. But I haven't. So my point is, sorry, Sherry, I haven't been in to see like if the health food stores, are people finally starting to realize maybe having yourself some essential oils and some herbs and things might not be a bad idea. I'm not sure. So I have not popped in to see like if they're wiped out or not as well. I might do that afterwards. I've seen elderberry tea before. My friend grew up in Hungary after the war. They used soft vine leaves as toilet paper. So now she says this experience has prepared for anything. Yeah, that's for sure. That is for sure. It's all relative, isn't it, to things that people have experienced. Yeah, I'll have to stop in just out of curiosity on the health food store. Reclaiming life, will the raw honey keep it from the shelf life as long? 12-hour live? No. Are you going by yourself, Patrick? I'll just call you afterwards. We'll have our own 12-hour live. I did read something where somebody said I can take the elderberry tincture, which is disgusting tasting, and put it in raw honey. I do use honey and cinnamon all the time when I get sick, which is awesome. I know yes, I do know that, but I don't know if does that shelf life stabilize it, because the vodka, elderberry tincture in vodka, the shelf life will last for a really long time. It does extend it, but I have a big family. I made up a huge batch of the syrup and it was gone so fast because, I give it to my whole family. So the last time I made it, I did it in the vodka because it's more concentrated and, you don't need as much of it. And apparently you can put it in honey and it tastes a lot better, which I'm going to be doing. Yeah, see, that's what I figured. The vodka is an even longer shelf life. You get about 3 months shelf life from elderberry syrup with raw honey. So yeah, it just goes really fast when you have a big family like mine. So I figured they can just have the nasty tasting stuff and put it in a little bit of honey for the taste and the benefits of honey. So I'm going to sneeze. I can feel it. We're going to shuffle till I can't feel myself going to sneeze. Plus, I just I don't know, for those of us who make tinctures and stuff like that, I think that I just like having something like elderberries, tincture, some kind of tincture going, because you generally put it in the jar. Like when I make the elderberry tincture, I'm putting the elderberries into the vodka and it's in the dark. But then every day you go shake it up for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and I just like having something going. So I'll have to see what I have next. Patrick is enjoying the natural remedies conversation while he eats a Mr. Goodbar. Chocolate, I'm sure there's some great thing about chocolate, but I think it's all dark chocolate, not Mr. Goodbar. Not Mr. Goodbar. But yeah, I mean, if you can't, I will definitely say, if you can't find hand sanitizer, do some Google searching. But there is some great recipes for and of course, making, everybody be adults, do your due diligence on what is irritant for you, what's not irritant for you, that kind of stuff. But making up thieves oil is great. So is, my mom has slathered us in that forever. And also, there's some great recipes out there for hand sanitizer. The one that I made up has witch hazel. You can use vodka, but in that case, I'd probably drink it. Witch hazel, lemon, orange, and tea tree oil, I think, is what I used for a hand sanitizer. But there are there's things out there if we just get a little bit. We didn't always used to be able to go to the store and buy hand sanitizer or things like that. And there are ways around it. So, PB&J here. I know I'm going to be hungry. I'm always hungry at the end of live chats. I'm always really hungry after live chats. Yeah, I definitely think, Claire, I think you might be backed up because you're responding to things back a ways. I love it. Ginger Faye wishes she could sage my work, but elementary school wishes you would probably get fired. That's for sure. Not to mention there are people who might be allergic to it. So I can do whatever I want to my space as long as it's healthy for me and Isabel. Okay, I'm gonna pull our weekly card. I think this is well shuffled. Oh, okay. Well, that's a big jumper, but I still want to pull it, and we're going to come back to that one. I keep a couple pounds of dried elderberries on hand at all times. Yeah, because it's difficult to, sometimes it's hard to find, even for me, just normally. It's not something that they tend to stock. So I always keep the dried ones on hand too, and thieves oil stuff for sure. For hand sanitizer, you have aloe on hand and just bought a handle of Everclear. Yeah, I don't think I have any Everclear, so I always have vodka on hand. You can't buy Everclear in my state, but my brother can. Westar makes hand sanitizer with Palmarosa, Raven Star, eucalyptus, bergamot, and lavender on the base of an aloe gel and a witch hazel. Does the aloe gel mix in very well? I haven't tried that before. But anyways, anybody who is not, hasn't made these things themselves, always do due diligence with research. Always make sure that you know what works on your skin and not your skin. Whether something is natural or you pick it up off of a shelf. Like, I don't care what it is. If you're putting something into or onto your body, you should always be doing your due diligence as to whether that's going to interact with a problem, if that you have, or medications that you have, or that might irritate your skin or anything like that. Even if I might say, well, this and this works great for me, that doesn't mean it's not going to work. It's going to work great for you. And so you always, no matter what, again, whether you buy it from a pharmacy, you buy it off of a shelf, or you pick it in your field, whatever it is, if you're ingesting and or putting something on you, do due diligence for what is good for you, for sure. Sorry. Always have to state those things when talking about stuff like anything to do with essential oils or that kind of stuff, because you don't want people being foolish. Again, dash of common sense, right? That's the whole world needs, a dash of common sense. I'm surprised there hasn't been more of a run on the stores for people buying and hoarding. So our soap aisles were wiped out. Hand sanitizer, hand soap, all of that stuff was totally wiped out. So they definitely have been going to the soap. I don't know how bad the health food store has been hit because I hadn't gone in yet because I'm pretty stocked. So I haven't checked, but now I'm curious. Okay. I'm very distractible today. Again, it's because I've been watching too many apocalypse movies. Okay. Oh, look at this. Okay, we're gonna turn this off for a minute. I do like this light. Like, I feel like I'm lit up better, which is great for classes. Again, this is what light setup was mostly for classes, so it was better to see. But it's not great for showing cards because it's right around the camera. So let me just hold this up for a minute. Here is the Nine of Cups, wish fulfillment. This quote is by Marcus Seneca, and it says, a happy life is one in accordance with its own nature. And look how beautiful that picture is. The picture is, I'm so blind. The picture is Riding on the Strand by Frank P. Stonelake. So, the number, this is interesting, right? This card is an interesting, I wonder if I hold it over here if you can kind of see it. What's interesting about the Nine of Cups is that the number 9 is a dynamic number, right? It's a number about energy that's bouncing off the wall. It's a high number. It's not a 1. It's a 9. So it's a high number. It's 3 plus 3 plus 3, which is growth, energy, movement. It's an odd number, which means it's going to be more active. And so you have this kind of bouncing off the wall energy with a number 9. And we have the cups, which is our emotions and our feelings and our connections with other people. It's also our intuition and our internal realm. It's the water of the high priestess, right? So this makes sense because understandably right now, everybody's emotions are bouncing off the wall at a simultaneous time, right? So very often people are all over the world are having difficulties and energies bouncing off the wall at different times and for different reasons. But right now we have people's emotions bouncing off the walls all sort of simultaneously together in this unified energy of emotions bouncing off the wall, which is just gonna, take all that energy and ramp it up a notch, right? So while I know that the like Rider-Waite-Smith and that type of thing is that kind of happily ever after wish fulfillment card that came from the Nine of Hearts and playing cards, but in terms of the card itself and the nine and that high degree of energy, there's nothing negative about that, but at the same time, it can be overwhelming. So a lot of heightened emotions and heightened energies is not that that's negative, but it can be very overwhelming. And especially if you're more sensitive to energy that's around you, if you're just a sensitive person, if you're already an amped up person, and then you've got all this, worldwide amped up energy, that gets really overwhelming very, very quickly. And so I think that with any of the nines energy, whether it's nine of the mind with swords, whether it's nine of pentacles with all that creative energy, the nine of hearts, any of the nines have a internal message that says, take a breath, right? This isn't negative, but the fact is it's a lot. And so kind of recentering yourself so that you can manage and be aware that there's a lot of energy going around, that your emotions might be heightened, even if you're like me and Miss Veronica and Miss Hanaconda and those of us with more darker humor to all of this. That doesn't mean that our energies might not be hyped up and heightened up. And so this is a really good time to pay attention, though, to the nine of, remember, I think often we get stuck on the cups being just emotions and then our relationships, the way our emotions connect us, but it's also about our intuition and trusting our instinct. Our intuitive nature is that same thing as that dash of common sense is you listen and trust your intuition. You're going to know what's the right thing to do each step of the way as we work our way through all of this. If you take a breath and kind of center and understand that there's a lot of energy going around so that you can manage that energy very well. So as you're mindful that your energy might be heightened, your panic might be heightened, all of that stuff is amped up around you. So how do you counteract that? Maybe you should be working on grounding. Maybe you do need to go outside, even if it's a little chilly out, and put your bare feet in the ground. Maybe you want to be working with really grounding crystals. Like for me, that would definitely be any black crystals tend to be obsidian is a huge one for me. That's very grounding and centering. That might be better than doing something that's going to amp you up even more. But also just listening to your intuition, because that is a resource that you have to trust your instincts on what's the best thing to do and how should you manage the situation at hand this week. So I think that's a great reminder card and sort of a barometer of what's the energy that's around us, because when we have a barometer on what's around us and we're paying attention to that, we can best sort of plan for it and suit for it. Oops, I just stuck it back in here and I need to put it in the, oh no, now I gotta find it. Well, we pause this broadcast while I find the Nine of Cups so I can stick it in its frame, because I just shoved it into the middle of this deck is so beautiful. I do love, there it is. Okay. It has, if you're just joining us and haven't seen this 5 million times, it has a little thing. Oh, I put it backwards because I do like the backs, but it has a little thing so that you can set it out for the week. And it sets up like that so that you can see it and check in with the energy all week. 9 cups of vodka would leave some people. I think 9 cups of vodka would kill me, but I'm a pretty much a one drink wonder. That is me. My limit's about 1. If I'm really kicking back, then it's 2, and that doesn't happen very often. Oh, the jumper card was actually the Eight of Pentacles. I'm not gonna try to find it, but the jumper card was the Eight of Pentacles, which I thought was interesting with that double fours of grounding, right? Let's root and let's ground ourselves. Energy's high, panic's high, all of this Nine of Cups energy is going on. The Eight of Pentacles comes in and says, okay, let's get your feet on the ground here. Let's have that sense of mastery and control over our reactions, our feelings, all that time, and kind of center ourselves in what needs to be done and getting that stuff done. So I thought it was a cool jumper. Yeah, all of us, Miss Veronica, who are wishing for the apocalypse, apparently need to be careful what we wish for. It's all going to get blamed on us for making the apocalypse come about. Okay, I'm going to swap pop here. Unhealthy pop. But I did not stock up on Coke Zero, surprisingly enough. So nobody would want to be trapped in the apartment with me for 3 weeks if I didn't have Coke Zero. I'll just have lots of tea. Okay, let's see. Let's pull this. We're going to pull one of these cards too, because I have it sitting here because I want to edge it because it's gorgeous. Let's pull a flower because we can. So this is The Language of Flowers by Charlene Darcy, who's done quite a few decks. But this one was recommended by somebody when I was showing that I love the mini decks. And this one, unlike others, it has a different image for each of the cards. So it has a different flower for each of the cards. This is the back. Of course, you can see black. So obviously, you know what I have to do to those edges. But let's just pull one because it's just sitting here in front of me. Sherry says if they run out Diet Pepsi, I will lose it. I hear you. I've gotten pretty good. I've greatly reduced my Diet Coke down by including lots more water. So that kind of forces, you only can drink so much. So I know I love these mini decks too. I have these four, and then somebody, when I was pointing to those out, how much I love them, they thought I might like this one because it has different things on the back. So I picked that. I ordered that one from Amazon. I love, as I said before when I was talking about them, what I love the mini decks for is casting on top of. I love setting one as sort of the theme for the reading and then pulling other cards or casting or whatever. Let me give it a riffle shuffle here. I also got the other deck. I wish I could reach it, but I did a walkthrough of it. It's my March deck. So if you followed my channel long enough, you probably know that in December and March, I tend to have a support deck that tends to be a really sweet deck. One that's just a more what I would consider to be like a hug deck, just for like grief work and that kind of stuff. For December is the month that my son passed away, and March is his birth month. So those are just the harder months of the year for me in terms of grief work. And so I saw, I think on Miss Nikki's Instagram, so I'm looking at it. That's why I'm looking over there. I saw this, it's called the Goddess Dream Oracle. I'm going to probably grab it and pull us a hug. I think we could use a hug card too. So I'll pull that. I need you here to help me get my reading room sorted. Oh, I can't. But think how wonderful it's going to be when it is sorted, Miss Veronica. It's going to be amazing. Like, you've done the hard work of clearing everything out. Now it's like the fun work of being able to figure it all out and where it's going to go. So you've got this. You've done the rough stuff. Black spinal, clear set, obsidian, citrine, and shore. Obsidian for sure for me, as well as blanking. What is the black tourmaline? Tourmaline. I have an amazing piece that's like an ancestor. For me, it's all ancestral, but this is a piece of black tourmaline from Mr. Patrick. And that is like, you know, that scene from what was that called? 2010. What is that one movie? The Space Odyssey, 2011, Space 2020, Space. I don't know. That one at the very beginning, it says, dun, dun, it was like this epic music, and this big like black cube is like coming down and then like bangs into the ground, and it's like the what is that name? What is the name of that movie? And it's like the spark of life. So then like that's when the cavemen got 2001 Space Odyssey. High five to everybody who knows way more than I. I always know what I'm talking about, but I don't know the details. And so then I have all of you to give me the details. But that's what I feel like with this one. It feels like the weight of the ancestors just roots and grounds you. It's the most amazing thing ever. Yeah. Anyways, anything for me, black smoky quartz also, especially a dark smoky quartz, they're really rooting and really grounding. Anyways. Thus spoke Zarathustra. 2001 Kubrick. What is Monolith? Thank you, Flamboyant Shungite. Yeah. Yes, Ginger. Monolith. That feeling of that thing just coming down, and it's just like okay. Let me pull this and then I'll grab the hug deck, because I do think we need a hug. I've done a walkthrough of it. I haven't put it up yet. I'll try to put it up today. Okay. Let's pull a flower and then we'll pull a hug. How about that? Azalea, so see, this is what we were saying. Okay, I can't hold it up. I don't think you can see it if I hold it up too close because of the light. And they're very labradorite, which is interesting. And labradorite for sure for anxiety. I have given my daughter a couple pieces, and I have a couple pieces of labradorite for anxiety and stress. Selenite is so calming. Yes, I agree. It's not weighted. I tend to need weight when energy is bouncing all over. So for me, selenite isn't weighted, but it's so calming. Selenite for me is like a hug deck. Anyways, I'm sorry. The card is Azalea, and it is, the keyword is temperance, and it says find balance and be centered. This is exactly what we need. Miss Veronica. Miss Veronica says, Chris just asked why I was yelling monolith across the room because I have my headphones on. I can just see monolith. And this person next to me like, what is, you've lost it. Anyways, yeah, I think we just all need a little bit of temperance and balancing, right? Those of us who are going a little crazy with the apocalypse, we probably could swing to center a little bit. Those that are panicking a little bit much could swing to center, right? If we all swing to center, we'll be there to support each other a little bit better. Okay, let me grab the hug deck here while Miss Veronica explains to her husband why she's screaming monolith. Okay. Drink. Set this over here. I guess we'll set the azalea up here with the 9 of cups, because there's the 9 of cups that's saying lots of energy bouncing around, and then azalea comes in and says, come on, zone in. Everybody kind of shift your gears a little bit here. Okay, so this deck is called the Goddess Dream Oracle by Wendy Andrew. And like I said, I've done a walkthrough with it. I just haven't put it up yet. I love Rockpool Publishing did an amazing job with the linen on the book and the box. So they don't normally do. And here's the backs, which are really, really sweet. Again, for December and for March, I generally look for a hug deck. Like I'm looking specifically for a hug deck. And I'm not saying this actually has a lot of powerful cards in it too. Some overlapping maybe energy and maybe some just different kinds of art. It's definitely art, I believe, that was pre-existing that kind of got pulled in, but it's all really supportive. And in terms of like pulling for a single card or even like a 3 card, I think it's really beautiful. For that, I don't really do like, this isn't a type of deck I would do large readings with. Then it would be a deck with a system, an oracle deck with a system, like, you know, like my beautiful deck, or like the open portals, or like even the reflects deck, which is oracle reflects, which is not that got suits, the shaman's oracle, those kind of decks. I'll do big readings with oracle decks, but when they're kind of these types of deck, I tend to do more 1 or at most 3 cards. Bye, Matthew. Stay centered, Matthew, according to Temperance. According to Azalea, just stay centered. Find balance and be centered. That's our message. The monolith, Claire. Claire's just now yelling the monolith. I love it. I love it. I have to go, but okay, I saw that. Biffy says, I'm in the same boat. This is just what I need to start Sunday morning. I'm glad you're having a good Sunday morning. Yes. Yeah, I think that, and that's the other thing, like in terms of like soaking ourselves in the news, like I think there's a point in which it can get overbalanced, right? Or out of balance. Like I think that being aware and keeping up with things is really important. And obviously sending out prayers or good energy, lighting candles, doing, you know, mojo magic, you know, whatever you want to do for the people that could use it. Is a proactive way to be doing things. But if you're, you know, glued to the news, and or as we already talked about, glued to social media, you know when to step back and say, okay, I've got enough of the basics. I don't need to like drench myself, because then you're not kind of sitting in balance. Okay, let's pull a hug card. I don't normally use my hug decks during the month with other people than myself, but I'll make an exception. I'll make an exception for that rule, because I think we can all use it. Oh, take a breath. Okay, I'm gonna look at all 3 cards, but I'm gonna look at the main card first. So here, and this is so bad. This is the insight card, which is the Morgan, which is a big card for me. So this card, some of the cards relate directly to specific goddesses. Sometimes it's just sort of goddess energy, but this one, and also all of them have animals. So we can see the white stag and the raven here. And the card is insight, that says to be open to enchantment, to be open to seeing magic, to be kind of like what we saw with the needing to trust your own intuition, like go inward and make sure that you are being insightful, that you're paying attention to the things around you and the opportunities around. Again, we want to be smart. We want to be wise. We want to have insight. We want to see clearly without swinging to the degree of panic and things like that, because that does not allow us to be insightful. So there's a lot of power in this particular card, because you're seeing the signs, you're being observant, you're going to miss it if you're not paying attention. The card that came before it was the dreaming. So this wasn't a specific goddess. It is just to be aware of your dreams, be open to enchantment, and be open to insight. So it's be aware of your dreams, be aware of those unconscious things that are going on, because that does have an effect on us, right? That we have to pay attention to those messages from dreams, pay attention to our subconscious, and are we feeling like we're fine, but we've got a lot of anxiety actually bubbling up in our dreams, that kind of thing. And then, of course, then also pay attention to your insight. So it's that inward gaze and what's the outward gaze as well. Make sure that's that. And then the last card at the bottom is the life purpose card, which I think is Bridget on here, but it's about manifesting your dreams and sort of taking an act. This is such a bad, the poor deck doesn't get a good. This was the first one, which is dreaming. This is the second one, which is insight. And the third one is life's purpose and to manifest your dreams. But what I love about this is those sort of stars in her hands, the sort of constellations in her hands, and this idea of manifesting your dreams, right? And I think just in terms of the situation we've been talking about in terms of anxiety and stuff, you have that monitoring internally, monitoring with your insight and paying attention and things of that nature. And then we have this very active, we got this active flying swan. We have the wolf there. We have the idea of going forward with purpose, right? So you're monitoring the inner space, you're having insight and being discerning about your outer insight, your outer sight, and then you are proactively manifesting what it is that you need to do at this time. Then you're moving forward with purpose from that space. So that works as well. Although I think probably this does best as just pulling a single card. I do like this one that popped out as well. This says that the darkest hour is just before the dawn. We've definitely had some jumpers today. Bright future. That's good to see. We'll take that. We'll take a bright future with all of this chaos. Everybody's congratulating Biffy, so I was too busy reading. So let me see what Biffy says. Guess what, everyone? I just picked up a copy of it. 1986 Mythic Tarot for 12 Aussie. That's awesome. That is fantastic. It's such a beautiful, deck for sure. And the first edition. I mean, the second edition is a beautiful edition, but I don't think it can trump the beauty of the first edition for sure. Oh, she said it was her first deck when she was 16 and was destroyed. And so now she's able to get it back for such a cheap price. That's awesome. Toadstool said, do I have a particular philosophy on jumpers? Yeah, I guess so. Like I because it's me, right? I'm the one shuffling. I'm sorry, I'm kind of like sitting on my shirt funny when I got up. Since it's me, right, I can kind of tell if sometimes it's just bad shuffling, right? Sometimes it's just bad shuffling. I'm shuffling poorly. I'm like, if I'm teaching class and I have this like a tripod thing like in front of me, I often shuffle badly because my hands are just kind of at an awkward angle. So I can tell when it's just, okay, I just shuffle badly and I just pick them up and keep shuffling. Sometimes, they're, well, two things, I guess, twofold. Sometimes it feels important. I just have, there's always a giant dose of intuition that goes into reading. And sometimes that intuitive hit is, oh, pay attention. So then I pay attention. Sometimes the other part of that is it doesn't really matter, right? We're looking for synchronistic moments, right? We're looking for randomness. So when we're shuffling and we are, and something falls out or jumps out or flips the wrong way, whether that's due to magic or synchronistic happenstance, it's still something that's random that you can read. So I feel like that goes all three of those ways. Sometimes it's just poor shuffling. Sometimes it's a pay attention, and sometimes the answer is that it doesn't really matter which one it is. It's still an opportunity for synchronicity to occur. So that's my thinking. Yeah, so you have to know yourself. If you're just a clumsy shuffler, because some people are, like some people just aren't comfortable shuffling. I particularly will find it be clumsiness for me if I'm doing multiple readings in a row and I'm using different size decks, right? Because sometimes I'm doing a Lenormand reading and I'm using a little poker or even a mini, and then I'm going to a large oracle, and then I'm going to this size tarot and then this size tarot. And so sometimes going my hand size going back and forth like that, I'll start to get clumsy. And then some people just, they're just not good shufflers. I tend to be a pretty solid shuffler. And so I do pay attention. It's either I'm being clumsy and I know it, or there's an exclamation point there. Let's just take a peek at it. Then I always stick it back in and continue to shuffle. I don't generally just leave it out, or it doesn't matter. It's synchronicity, and so it's got something to say either way. So, because I believe that every single card especially in a tarot deck or a Lenormand deck, every single card in that deck has something to say about the situation. So I might as well see what it's saying, right? Goth and Gallic. Hello, everyone. I'm new to this channel. It's popped up on my recommendation. Aw, well, welcome to the craziness. We're just wrapping up here for our chats. We normally have sort of a free-for-all chat on Saturdays, sometimes Sundays, where we start with a bit of a topic, or we try to, and then it goes into a bit of a free-for-all chit chat. So welcome to the chaos of Saturday chats. The Intel woman says, when I shuffle, if a card flies out in the shuffle and it's face up, I use it, and the card is usually spot on to my question. Yeah. Somebody else, I think, said that. Molly says the same, Sherry, and I know the difference between my own clumsiness and true jumper. Yeah, for sure. I agree with Molly. I mean, I think that you can I think you can tell the difference. And then I also 100% believe that it doesn't matter either way, right? I mean, that's kind of the point with divination, right? Any divination system that you're working it heavily relies on synchronicity and happenstance. And so we have to believe in some degree that doesn't matter what comes up, it's going to trigger something, and that message might look different, right? So, if one card shows up versus another card, that message that it triggers for me might look different, but it's still a valid message. It's still something valid to listen to. So I don't worry about it too much. By Essence, I think Essence was heading out. Most people are probably starting to head out. They're like, okay, this is about as much as I can handle of zombie apocalypse conversations, mixed with a bit of oracle, mixed with a little bit. Let's all take a breath and balance. Like, we can only handle so much of this. Let me put this away. Crystal deck, other deck. This one I need to this one's getting the Sharpie marker with probably Apocalypse movie this evening. Nice big chunky Sharpie and a nice black on both sides deck that needs to have that black coating all around. Bam. That makes for a perfect evening of Apocalypse movies. Apocalypse movies and relaxation. Yeah, these chunky ones are really good. This is called the Magnum, but they're great for decks because you have that nice flat surface to wipe it on, and it works really well. Biffy says, funny, isn't it? When a jumper falls face down, it reminds me of the toast landing butter side down. Oh, no. Maybe I should add a 5-second rule. I definitely agree. Ginger Faye is heading to Hobby Lobby. Colette Baron Reed apparently once said, what goes to the floor comes to the door. I'm not sure what that means, but if it's kind of the 5-second rule of a card fell on the floor and pay attention to it. I'm not sure, but I'll go with it. It's got an exclamation point on it. It's basically, I think, the point. Lou says, I do that too. If it's face down, it just means stop shuffling. If it's face up, I include the card. That's interesting. That seems to be, that makes sense. I mean, if something falls down, face down, it's kind of closed, right? That energy isn't so open to needing to be heard. Where if it's face up, I would think of that energy as being open and manifested and to pay attention to. That's kind of what you can do with the casting as well. So it makes sense. Miss Veronica says, I needed this today. Thank you as well. Thank all of you for coming in and putting up with the chat. And I think that's one of the things that our little group here does very well, is kind of, we can meet in the middle, right? I know that we have already proven we have some people like me who are a bit on the dark humor aspect of things, in regards to states of affair. And I know we have definitely people who are on the panic side, but I think that we can have proven time and time again that we can come together and support each other, regardless of the ways in which we might react to these things. So it's always a joy for me, and always a highlight for me as well, to come in and get to spend Saturday or Sunday with people. So very lovely, and I appreciate everybody's joining in. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, and I hope that you guys all have a wonderful rest of your weekend, whatever that looks like, whether that's got work in it. Some of us weekends are pretty busy work-wise, or whether that's, relaxing and doing what you have to do. I would definitely say everybody stay calm, everybody keep breathing, everybody keep having empathy. Like, if we can maintain empathy and compassion, one of the things that I love, one of the reasons that I love both monster theory. So if you read a lot of the older monster stories, and that's the whole point of really watching monster type books, and then of course now movies, and as well it goes for the apocalypse style books and movies, is that one of the things that it asks, the question those types of things ask, is how quickly do we lose our humanity, right? The question is when it becomes a free-for-all, when it becomes these scarier situations that these movies and books are talking about. They're exaggerations, right? A lot of them with zombies and things of that nature, although some of us might argue that. But they're asking the same question. They're asking, how do you maintain your humanity in the midst of extreme crisis, right? Is it possible? Like, a lot of times, apocalypse books are asking the question, is it even possible to really maintain your humanity when it becomes life and death and all those things, right? So, I think that in the grand scheme of things, even though we're not in the zombie apocalypse, maintaining our humanity and maintaining compassion, maintaining a sense of humor, seeing joy, supporting each other, all of those things are only going to help us in whatever is coming down the pike, whatever anybody's dealing with right now. If we can maintain that bit of balance and that bit of humanity in terms of the best parts of humanity, because humanity also has its shadow side, but if we can maintain that, we're all going to fare better as a group. And so, yes, just everybody be kind to yourself and others, and we'll all get through this together. So, off my soapbox. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will talk to you guys all later. I'm kicking you off the stream.